All right, we're here to answer the question, what is champagne sauce? This is a French term. It is a French word that refers to a very traditional white wine mushroom cream sauce that is used throughout France and other parts of the world. Now, strangely enough, there isn't necessarily any champagne in champagne sauce. The word champagne sauce refers to in dedication or remembrance of the region of Champagne. It is also a codified reference to this specific style of formula that the French used to make a white wine cream sauce with mushrooms. So, the way we're going to do that is we're going to puree some shallot, not puree, we're going to mince some shallot, celery, carrot, and mushroom in the food processor real quick, and we're going to make a white wine reduction. Now, traditionally, again, the wine that is used is typically a still white wine from the region of Champagne. However, one would never necessarily use champagne in any reduction because champagne, remember, is really a white wine with effervescence. So once you begin reducing it, the effervescence disappears, so all you really have is the white wine. So traditionally, even the French use a still white wine from the region of Champagne. Of course, all dry white wines certainly embody the spirit of the type of sauce that this is. So one doesn't need a wine from Champagne to make champagne sauce, okay? And we're not going to use one today. As a matter of fact, we're going to use an Italian dry white wine. All right, so we're going to take some shallots, and these, of course, are concentrated miniature onions. One of these is the equivalent of 3 medium-sized Spanish onions in terms of their potency and flavor. So we're going to do a quick chop on the shallot. You, of course, find this recipe in the index under champagne sauce. Really, the way you should view this sauce is that this is a sauce, a general sauce for multiple uses that has a white wine mushroom cream. And it's very, very useful sauce for many different things. One can certainly put different herbs and spices and stuff in the reduction. We're going to, well, first we're going to put the blade in the food processor. We're going to chop up the celery and the carrot. You certainly can mince these by hand if you want, but this seems to do the job really, really well. And finally, we'll put the mushrooms in there. These are some nice creamy white mushrooms too. So the essence of mushroom, which is what we're going to extract from these mushrooms in this white wine reduction, is what you want. What you want when you taste the champagne sauce is you want to taste mushroom. You want it coming out at you. And there's the chopped mushroom. Now, I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to cover this with some white wine. I'm going to make myself about 1.5 quarts of sauce. And remember, a good rule of thumb for how much wine, and there is a recipe for this, of course, in the index under champagne sauce, but a good rule of thumb for reducing dry red or dry white wines to make white and red wine sauce is, whatever the amount of sauce is that you want to end up with, that's the amount of wine you should begin with. And because the wines would typically be reduced by approximately 75%, obviously you have to add some other liquids to the sauce to make it up, so that you end up with, 1.5 quarts or whatever it is you started out with in terms of the wine. Okay? So we're going to add a little bit of bay leaf and some garlic and some thyme, dried leaf thyme, and a little bit of pepper. There we go. Now we're going to reduce this by about 75%. Then we're going to come back and we're going to add some concentrated chicken flavor and some cream and a little bit of beer mani or flour and butter mixture that's mixed together. And we're going to make this into a sauce. But for right now, we're going to let this reduce. And I'm going to come back to you, time elapsed. Probably going to take us about 10 to 15 minutes. And I may switch the pan because I think I may want to reduce this faster in a wider pan. So I'll be back in 1 second. All right, we're back, like I said, and the champagne sauce, which I had in this pan, and I moved into this pan here so it would reduce a little bit faster, has been 75% reduced. Now what I'm going to add to this is a little bit of chicken stock that's been concentrated, and a little bit of cream, well, more than a little bit of cream, and we're going to bring that up to a simmer. And we're probably going to add a little bit of roux to that. Just zoom in on that pan for a second there. And we'll show you the best time to add the roux to your sauce, of course, is during the point at which before the sauce comes to a boil. So I have a little beer mani here, and of course you can find this in the index under thickening agents and liaisons. And I'm going to add a little bit here to this. This is one way that you can thicken this sauce, being careful not to add too much of this roux in the front end of the sauce. You can, of course, not add any roux to this and just reduce it to sauce consistency, the cream itself. But I think that might be more concentrated than you need, and it would be acceptable. But I'm electing to thicken it with a little bit of roux. That's the old style, traditional way in which the French make their champagne sauce. So we're going to let this come to a simmer now, and I'm going to time elapse this demonstration also. We'll be back in 1 second as this comes to a simmer and begins to come to sauce consistency. Okay, continuing with that champagne sauce. The white wine was reduced. We added the cream and the chicken stock and a little bit of roux, and that has been simmering for about 10 minutes now. And as you can see, it's all over the cutting board, but looks good. And now we're going to strain this mixture through a fine strainer here. Which would be the normal procedure for this kind of sauce. You want a nice, smooth, delicate texture, and you really only get that by passing it through one of these chinois, or screens, if you will. So. And this would be the best way to strain your sauce through that cap with the ladle, just by beating down on the vegetables a little bit, you see? Until they become somewhat dry. And we'll discard those vegetables. They have been used, and we've extracted all the flavor, texture from those vegetables that you're going to get. Okay. Now we go to the stage of making the sauce for the final adjustment. As you can see now, the sauce is just a little bit too thin. So we're going to time elapse this slightly some more, and we're going to reduce this for a couple of minutes until it comes down to sauce consistency. We'll be back in 1 second to complete that for you. Okay, the completion of the answer to the question, how do you make champagne sauce, is right here. I left you a second ago with the champagne sauce reducing. I let it reduce for about 3 to 4 more minutes, and it is at the texture that I want it to be. And I'm going to show you what that texture looks like. That would be sauce consistency there. You see that? How that coats that plate good? Now, I'm going to demonstrate for you one finishing process that certainly would be an option for the cook, and that would be a thing called buttering the sauce. Now, one butters the sauce by adding 2 ounces of whole, soft, unsalted butter and whisking it into, per quart, 2 ounces per quart of sauce. Now you can use that same formula to butter soup too. So we're going to put a couple ounces of butter and we're going to beat it into the sauce until the sauce absorbs it completely. This will give it a little finishing mellowness too, and of course the taste of butter can never hurt anything. And again, this is an option for your sauce, but it's important that you see how this is done. And then of course the final seasoning of the sauce. This sauce needs a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. The sauce needs a pinch more salt. You'll notice that the seasoning process is tasting, seasoning, tasting, seasoning, that we never use our magical hands, of course, to take what we think is the appropriate amount of salt and put it into the sauce from the beginning part of the seasoning. You always put in what you think is less and gradually work your way up so you don't accidentally make it too salty. This sauce is complete, and I like the texture and the flavor, and that is champagne sauce for you, or also known as white wine mushroom cream sauce. Keep in mind that one can add different flavor, herbs, and so on and so forth to the white wine reduction, like rosemary or tarragon and basil and so on and so forth. But this would be a good basic sauce, and all by itself, with no other additions, it's really delicious, and you'll like this. Champagne sauce.